From a closet, also known as the Jim McCarthy Voiceovers World Headquarters Studio, this is the JMVO Weekly Primer. Please subscribe, rate, and comment via jimmccarthyvoiceovers.com/podcast. This is episode 36, the first episode of season 2 of the JMVO Weekly Primer. The JMVO Weekly Primer is about making your life better through marinating your mind in good stuff. My name is Jim McCarthy, owner, operator, and chief bottle washer. At jimmccarthyvoiceovers.com, I believe that as business owners, entrepreneurs, and overall salespeople, we are bombarded by negativity every day. And it's the last thing we need. If you want to see your life and business change for the better, consume nurturing, good stuff. Subscribe via jimmccarthyvoiceovers.com/podcast. Pick your poison for your iPhone and Android, iTunes, Stitcher, Blueberry. That's all there. If there's a medium you want me to get on so you can access the podcast, by all means, let me know. I think I'm on Google Play and that's already listed there, but I may not be, but you never know. Hey, you know what? The primer's been picked up by none other than Big Dot Lighting, commercial LED lighting conversion specialists. They're sponsoring the primer for us this year for 2019. We convert all sorts of commercial facilities to energy efficient LED lighting. And the biggest thing this year, we're finding that a lot of businesses are really feeling the urgency to convert over to LED lighting. And Lamplan, the lighting and maintenance partnership, is big for businesses that are wanting to do OpEx type of approaches for otherwise what would be a capital expense project. So definitely look it up, big.lighting.com. And on with the show, we are actually, I'm kicking off 2019 with another friend of mine from high school. Last episode, we had Dave DeCerbo, who he runs the Destination Backcountry, which is basically you hire him to bring you out and show you how to rough it for a couple of days and get uncomfortable. But this particular friend of mine was somebody that we were always in class together, probably from 7th grade on. Always had a, kind of a loose relationship, not exactly, best buds, but we're always aware of each other. Fast forward, we graduate. Her boyfriend throughout high school was a great guy, and he was another person that I want to say I knew him in Park Avenue for some reason, which is my elementary school, if you haven't known about that. But I've always known of him. He's always just been a good guy. One of those people that come into your life that instinctively you meet him and like, man, you're just a great guy. You're just a good person. They started dating in high school, and of course, everybody graduates high school. We go our separate ways. Some people go to college. Some people do what I did and go to the School of Hard Knocks. And then Facebook comes around in 06, 07, and we all get reunited through Facebook. Come to discover that, they had gotten married and beaten the odds in terms of marriage statistics, okay? High school sweethearts. He, Chuck, went into the Marines. They got married. He became a husband and a father, a wife and a mother, started building a family. They got uncomfortable. They moved out to the West Coast, and we were just talking about this. She's been out there for 20 years now, and things are going really great. I even reached out to her. I said, you know what, I got to tell you that to see you guys still together after all this time just gives me such hope. It really, and I didn't want to come across as weird or anything. It really did mean something to me. And it was one of those things that kind of redefined the friendship, I think, and moving forward, on a Facebook level. So every now and then we'd comment on each other's pictures and all that other good stuff. And come 2015, I want to say, Karen, my guest today, put up a picture of Chuck where he was hugging his son. And he was laying in bed. And I looked at it, and he didn't look right. And I showed my wife, my wife was a hospice home health aide for many, many years. And I showed her, I took my phone, I showed it to her, and I said, hey, does he look okay? And instinctively she says, no, not at all. I said, okay. And I think I actually direct messaged Karen. I said, hey, is Chuck okay? You know, at the time, I think they were thinking it might have been something intestinal, like some sort of an illness and everything. And then, guys, the unthinkable happened. Okay, the diagnosis. I want to say he was probably he was my age. You know, this is why it hit me so hard at the time. It was my age, somebody that I had known since high school. Father, husband, brother, Marine, built a family, all around great guy, diagnosed with cancer. That really hits you, okay? And it was of the kind that's not curable. That the kind that it was pancreatic, okay? That basically, I mean, I was from afar. I'm from thousands of miles away, massive distance, all digital over Facebook. It hit me in the gut. And I had an instinctual urge. I want to say it's from God. That ultimately there was something in me that said, look, show them my light and use your gifts and talents to help them in this situation. So I reached out to her. I said, listen, anything that I can do to make the situation a little bit more palatable, I'm more than happy to help out. And I felt another urging from God that said, look, you know what to do. You know that time is at a premium. Money is probably very important, and the ability to soak up as much life in whatever time Chuck has left. Okay. And make sure that something happens. So I said, okay, GoFundMe. First time I ever tried a GoFundMe page. I wrote a story. It literally just poured out of me while I was at work that day. And I put it up with their blessing. We made the arrangements beforehand. And here we are. About a year later, Chuck passed. And they had a celebration of life and everything. But they in that last part of life, they really, I would hope, lived up and packed a lot of life into that time. Ultimately, what ended up happening is from afar, I would check in periodically. But, on Facebook, I don't want to say she was putting her best foot forward, but it seemed that over this time, it was the articulation of her emotions and what she was going through was not of desperation and woe is me. There was an element of optimism in each and every message, and I was thinking to myself, my gosh, this is incredible. This is absolutely incredible. She's losing her best friend. She knows it's coming. But to read her posts and updates, and I'm going to start condensing this now and bring her on. I got to say, Karen, and I'm going to bring you on now, that it was absolutely incredible to see how you handled it throughout all that time. And I want to kind of dive into that process of that mentality and your thinking at the time, if you're okay with that.
Mm-hmm. Of course.
Karen has been in San Diego for the past 20 years. She's also a social worker, which in and of itself is a mega, just an unbelievably difficult job, I would imagine, and the things that you go through.
Oh, yeah.
Tell me about the story. I mean, I reached out to you that day when Chuck was, I saw the picture. What was going through your mind at that time?
Well, it's catastrophic. I mean, it's like the floor just drops out from underneath you because, you never can imagine that, you would get a terminal diagnosis at such a young age. He wasn't ill. He wasn't sick. There wasn't a whole lot. Sorry, I dropped the little ear.
That's right.
There wasn't a whole lot of, health issues with him. So it just came on so fast. And so from there, honestly, a lot of how we did things, I just jumped off of him. I mean, he was, he was ultimately what drove our family to be able to look at things in a way that was not going to be woe is me. I'm not going to sit in the corner and just cry and pretend this isn't happening. It's happening, and we're going to face it, and we're going to make the best of this and move on. So, he had a lot to do with, how I was during that time. And when he wasn't feeling well, which was a lot of the time, and I would try and even if I wanted to cry, he's like, not yet. It's not time yet. No crying yet, So, he just said, we're just going to turn this into, the best it can be. And, honestly, he never gave up hope that there was some miracle too. You know what I mean? And so, aside from everything else, I think that there was still always that in the back of our minds, knowing what the reality was, that, maybe there is some miracle to be had. But.
And what kind of things did you find during that time, miracle-wise? I mean, did any of them come to fruition?
Well, that I could see. I mean, only that he was given 6 months to live, and he lived a whole year. And and he behaved in such a manner that he looked beautiful. He was able to do things around the house in between of his treatments. He went to Las Vegas. In fact, he had a heart attack in the middle of all of this. Jim, I'm not sure if you remember, but he had a heart attack.
Right.
But he had plans to go to Las Vegas. So, oh my God, that he got out of the hospital and got on an airplane with this heart monitor pack that looked like a bomb. It was, but that was Chuck. He moved on, and he wanted to just grab as much as he could. So, those are the miracles that I can see. I mean, obviously his health just continued to decline. I mean, the medicine that they were giving him, the treatments, they just quit working. So,
right. And you just knew that at that point it was time.
Yeah. And that was a really hard decision too. I mean, because whatever medicine was left over for him to be able to take was going to be worse than the symptoms. And, so it was a hard conversation, and we just, decided that it was going to be, we were just going to let everything play out the way it was going to play out. So it was really just a couple of weeks after he stopped treatment that he passed away.
That was the same kind of situation with my father. Honestly, he actually swore off hospice and wanted to go to Alaska. And shortly after that, he just, he passed. But, that was 64. Chuck was 41, if I'm not mistaken. 41. Yes. 41. Again, I'm not trying to take away from people who have gone through some similar things like this. I know a lot of people whose lives have been cut short from a myriad of reasons. But again, getting back to the face that seemed to be put out there, I thought it was just amazing. The updates, the underlying, a feeling of hope that was in each and every update, even though the end game was how it played out. None of us are getting out of this world alive. But it's unfortunate to find out. My wife and I actually had a conversation. Would you rather know ahead of time and have the time and ability to appreciate it, or, despite what's going to happen, the way Chuck died wasn't the most desired way to go out. Okay. The treatments, the chemo, the radiation, it's not fun at all. No. Okay. What was going through your mind? I mean, did you see the time that you had left and kind of put a premium on it for yourself? I mean, Chuck was kind of the inspiration to keep the hope alive, and he kind of shaped how your attitude was. How do you think you would have reacted had you not had that? He still would have. I honestly believe that he still would have continued to his path of just doing everything that he could to grab life. And he wasn't a big talker, and I've said this before. He was a doer. He was a shower. He wouldn't bend your ear. He just lived his life with grace and dignity, and he was just he was tough. I mean, even in the most pain, he just moved forward. So to me, when I was putting everything out on social media, because that was very therapeutic for me, because, it could go both ways. Some people are like, well, that's a little too much, some people are much more private. But for me, it was a way of
of dealing with it, and even putting forth out there. And then, it was a community that I needed, and I to this day appreciate having in my life during that time frame. But I think at the end of the day, we're just innately one of those, we were always been, even I raised, you fall down, you get up, you brush off, you move, and so that's always been sort of a mentality just growing up, and how I was raised. And my mother, actually, I mean, not only were we high school sweethearts, but, from the time he was about 15, my mom, kind of, took him under her wing too. So when he graduated from the Marine Corps, we'd go out to South Carolina, and everyone kept mistaking her for his mom, and so everyone was all confused. But so he was, for all intents and purposes, raised in a similar way from about 15, middle teenage years too. And so then watching him go through pain and suffering, I thought to myself, I mean, there is not anything that goes on in my day, aside that could match up to that. So, why even go there, as far as like, oh, I've had a horrible day and this and that, and boo-hooing about it. It just brought my standard way higher for feeling sorry for myself, and I think that Chuck did a lot of that for a lot of other people too. Like, you really step back and see, that somebody can suffer through and go through such a process and still be so positive, so, motivated, just a good person. He laughed before he would ever cry. And, I think that it really inspired a lot of people.
It certainly did for me. When you get in front of people in the situations you experience at work, does this have a new effect on how you treat these cases with what you do for a living?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this whole experience just brought me to a different level in life. I mean, I think everyone functions at different levels, and that's okay. But having gone through this whole process, I think I just see things, now, and and I have to say that I'm more empathetic in the sense to where I can put myself, a little bit further back and see. I mean, I guess it just broadened, you know what I mean? Like, I think most of us who grew up in your average middle class Connecticut home, go to college or not, or whatever it is. I mean, we have a general existence. We function in this, in this particular way until something, bam, happens to you that's traumatic or just life-changing, and then it can either close it down for you or open it further up. So I guess, I just take everything and try and look at it in a much broader way, now.
What is that? So it kind of opened everything up for you. I mean, your attitude towards life is far different than it was 4 years ago, I would imagine. Absolutely,
and where I would have been, more hesitant to do something or to put it out there and, just say, what, it's all right. I mean, if somebody doesn't understand or doesn't agree, that's okay. That's all right. And, and everyone processes their experiences in a different way and handles things differently. And, and we're all going through it. I mean, I think we've seen the memes and whatever else, and sometimes it seems almost cliche, but we are all going through something. And whether it's catastrophic or smaller or whatever the case may be, I mean, we just have to understand that, you step back and try and have some understanding, compassion, and some insight, or not, like, for example, Chuck's been gone for 2 years, but I had an opportunity to, to find support and care in Mike Pernew, and he's been huge in being able to get me through. He's also a Danburian, get me through a lot of this different stages, but I think on the outside, a lot of people would be like, well, that was kind of quick, as far as, being able to transition. But I guess what people don't understand is that when you have a terminal diagnosis, and I totally agree, and I don't know what you and your wife had come up with that day, but 1,000,000,000% we were grateful to have the opportunity to plan versus, you get up one day, you go to work, boom, you're gone. I mean, that's the type of shock that takes people 8 years to get over because it's just too much.
Yeah.
When you have a year to plan and you've had the conversations and you're sort of preparing all that time, it almost gives you a head start into the next stage, of healing. And maybe not for everybody. I mean, I can't speak for everybody. It just was for me, and being how Chuck was, just loving and positive and, not angry and bitter and whatever. And he wanted the best for me and for his kids and, for everybody. And so, again, I have to take whatever people's experiences are theirs, so I've taken mine, I've dealt with it how I can, and I continue to, and it's still very, very hard. I mean, there are certain times where, it just hits you like a ton of bricks, and it's surreal still. I mean, my son who's 17, he even texted me, and he's dealt with this in a very interesting way too. I mean, not very emotional initially, and he's more of an emotional type kid. He was quicker to cry as a young boy, but even to this day, like he will. He'll say, "You know what? I passed the gym mirror, Mom, and I saw Dad. I saw Dad in me." And then, and so I'm like, well, step back. And what's that telling you, So again, everyone has their own way and their own process. But for me, I think being optimistic about the future and understanding that nobody is perfect and everyone has a process, really is just the way to face, forward.
And again, guys, if you want a little bit to find out more about who Chuck was, I'll post the video that we did for him for the celebration of life. It'll be in the description of the YouTube video and the Facebook video, and as well as the podcast once we get it all packaged up and looking pretty and put it up on the socials. But getting back to that, you had mentioned preparing a year ahead of time, putting yourself in the moment when it does inevitably happen, and is it truly one thing to go to think and put yourself in something you haven't gone through versus actually going through it, right? Does that seem to make sense? Was it vastly different for you, or did those things that played out, those situations, the actual event of his passing, that I'm sure you played out over and over in your mind, when it actually happened, what was it different than what you imagined, or was the impact less or more? How did it tell us about it?
It was, I knew it because, I'm not sure if anyone's had to go. Chuck died here at the house. Like he wasn't at a hospice facility, so he was here. So, it's definitely a process. And, I must say, whoever works for hospice, including your wife, they were huge in being able to help me determine which stage he was in. And, and a lot of times all of us that pass, we act, doesn't matter our background or our social economic status, or we all behave. There's certain things that happen that we all do as human beings. It's a human thing. So I was able to know almost down to a time frame. And I just sat, and, he had a very hard time breathing. And, and honestly, I crawled into the hospice bed, and I told, because he always listened to me, Jim, I'll be honest with you. The man just listened whenever I told him. But I crawled into bed, and he could barely breathe, and I told him it was time to let go and not to be afraid. So it was 15 minutes later.
Wow.
So, yeah.
And how did you process? Did you have any idea that would even happen?
No, I didn't know, but I did. I just, it was very peaceful, in the sense where I wasn't holding him. I was just right next to him. So I must have been asleep, and I have a small pug dog. Well, he was a puppy at the time, and he knew, I knew, we were all in the same room, very close. And I woke up, and when I turned to look, he had passed, and both of his hands were up like this. It was very, very peaceful. And, I just walked over. But as far as the feeling goes, it was almost, honestly, a bit of relief because he was in such pain, he couldn't breathe. But then also it was like, holy shit, like, I just remember standing there for a long time, just not being able to move, initially. Then you do. I mean, I went and my kids were asleep. It was middle of the night, and I woke them up, and they came down and they hugged him and they kissed him. And my neighbor, I have really supportive neighbors came over, and we just all held arms together until, the next, they came and wrapped him in the flag. I think I even posed that was so poignant, and respectful. And it was right around Christmas time. It was right after Thanksgiving. So that was,
yes.
Yeah. And then everything kind of went from there. So,
yeah. Now, a lot of people in your situation would kick and scream and cry about unfairness and things of that nature. You obviously just didn't do that. I mean, your mentality and your mindset towards this was, I would imagine that had to be a part of it. That had to eke in at some point during this process of anger. I mean, anything.
Absolutely. And I'm not going to lie. I definitely had, a meltdown here or there, just where you're just sitting in the corner rocking going, I can't believe this. Like, and like, this wasn't the plan. We just turned 40. Damn it. It was not the plan. It just, you feel cheated. You feel like, that, things should have been different. But then, when you have an opportunity to settle down and, have that quiet moment and conversations with God and whomever it is that you spiritually connect to, that, there is a story, there is a reason, and whether it's made clear or not, you have to trust that, or at least that's how I think. You have to trust that, and understand that, there's going to be something good. I mean, something good has to come out of this. There has to be something that we take away from this. So.
And as far as Trevor is concerned, I know that you had mentioned before that, earlier in his life when he was going through this, he was younger and he felt a little bit easier to cry about this. Let him know from my experience losing my dad, and my dad missed out on a lot of things and most of his grandkids and things of that nature. But let him, tell him from this 43-year-old guy that he doesn't even know, it's okay. Okay. Just if you see, I see my dad in me constantly. I hear him. I wish he was here sometimes. I mean, when we went down for his funeral, I walked into their garage where my parents lived and saw all these things that were hanging on the walls, tools and a surfboard and all this stuff. And it just all of a sudden hit me. You can ask my wife. I wasn't a crier up until that point. It just hit me, said like a ton of bricks. And I wept like a baby. And, at that particular moment. And I still, my kids kind of joke like, Dad, we never see you cry. I'm like, oh, I cry. I cry. They're like, do you miss your dad? I'm like, oh, absolutely. You have no idea. He's been gone since '06. But, I believe that he lives on in me. I mean, I'm a probably living, breathing, walking example of who he was. And, just let Trevor know that, dude, it's okay. You lost your dad. That's a big part of your life. All right.
Big time. And he does. I mean, he looks so similar to him and he knows it too. They're like little, they are. And it's, same eyes, same hands. Like, it's so that almost, but totally different personalities. Like, well, not totally. He's a good boy, but, just, in the sense to where if I ever want to know what Chuck's eyes look like, all I have to do is look at my kid.
Yeah.
It's comforting amazing. Too, but yeah, and my daughter, who's 14, she was, very, very close with Chuck. So it's been a little bit different for her to be able to move past. She's still a lot further back in her acceptance of things.
Of course.
But everyone has their process, and that's okay. It's having patience and understanding that. So.
And, a lot of, I'm sure, I don't know if you're aware, but, it seems like a lot of people in our class, our graduating class, have passed on. Yeah. Recently, Kira Hushin, who, I don't know if you remember her, she went to Rogers Park with us. She was in high school with us. Okay. All of a sudden on Facebook, hey, RIP. I'm like, what the hell's going on here? I had no idea that she was going through anything, but, just kind of, there it is. She's gone. Right. It's so spontaneous, and it happens in such a at the drop of a hat sometimes, when you don't realize, I don't know what the situation was in that case, but I was impressed upon to write something, guys. Mm-hmm. If there's anything you want to do with your life, okay, the time is now, okay? Throw away the preconceived notions of what you're supposed to do or whose expectations you feel like you have to meet. Because when it comes down to the end of time, to the end of this whole thing, you're going to be sitting on a deathbed of some sort. And the last thing you want to have as little regret as possible. Okay? If there's anything that you always wanted to do, and I always implore this to people, be who you are. Be self-aware. If you wanted to start that business, go figure it out. Start it as a side hustle. Make the most out of your potential, because the worst thing in life is to realize when it's too late that you squandered your potential. Okay, and I don't know if that's something that is that something you've adopted and kind of impart to your kids and your clients moving forward?
Absolutely. No, that has been the biggest piece in this whole taking away what it is to understand about going through something like this, is that you have to, just do it, just move, and
if you ever wanted to move out of Danbury, we have a lot of people probably that are going to listen and watch this from Danbury. Get the hell out of the state. If you ever wanted to move to Florida, if you ever wanted to go wherever you want to go, just do it. Okay. I was on a show a couple of months ago, and he asked me, he says, what's the biggest risk you took? I said, moving to Vegas. He says, yeah. And he grew up in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, and he's capitalizing on being one of the biggest realtors there now, which is great for him. Good time, Tommy. But he says, man, I wish I did that when I was younger, moved around. Yeah. I'm like, dude, it's the best learning experience. Perspective.
Absolutely. Yes.
It gives you such perspective. So if anybody's listening to this and you had something, that little voice in your head saying, just do it. Execution beats perfection every single day. Just take action. All right. Yes. Before it's too late. You never know when you're going to get that life-changing news that you're like, crap. Yeah. Man, I should have done it. I should have done it. And you don't want to do that. At least you know that you tried. Okay. And a lot of people just they live their life with what they were supposed to do.
Yep.
Imparted upon them by somebody else. Damn it, it's your life. Exactly. Okay? Yours. And I had this conversation today with a friend of mine who, she's really imparting upon her kids to, she's very, very smart kids and really tries to lead them down the path that we were led down. I'm not a big fan of, and I'm not sure if you know this about me, but I'm not a big fan of leading people down a path that feeds my ego. Okay. My kids. Okay. With my kids, I tell them, look, if you want to become a tow truck driver, if that what makes you happy, go knock yourself out. Okay. It's a good paying job. That's fine. If you want to become a welder, awesome. Okay. That's who you are. I don't want you at 35 to look at me and go, man, I really resent you because I followed the path that you wanted for me. That's why I think it's great that that you're. It's bad and good for the kids to have to go through this. Yes. But at the same time, it's going to shape them for the rest of their lives. I think in a very positive way. I agree.
It's all about how you look at it.
It really is. And I would imagine that what are some of the good things that you did find? Some of the blessings that came out of this that you really were kind of blown away by? if you
The
will?
people, the support, the people. Jim, I had no idea. In fact, it taught me how to be more aware of other people and what they may need from me. Or I was just blown away by the people in our lives that went out of their way, whether it was local friends or through social media or what have you, that took the time. I mean, messaged me paragraphs, just took the time to talk to me, to talk about this, to lend their hand and their support. That it taught me that, I had been the type of person, again, pretty self-absorbed in your own life and your own kids and whatever else. And you'd hear news, even, bad news, and you'd be like, oh man, that's terrible. That really, and even if it bothered, you think about it for a couple days and whatever else, but you leave it there, right? Now what I took, I'll send that, that message. I'll call that person. Because I remember how that helped me and my children. I mean, teachers and other kids, like people that we never even would have considered caring, much less taken the time. So that was a big lesson. That's a huge change. Also, aside from all the other change, is that I feel like I'm much more engaged in what others need from me, if I can help them at all. So other than just saying, "Oh man, that's bad news," I'll say a prayer for them. I'll take it, a couple steps further now. Go sit with. I had another good friends of ours diagnosed right after Chuck passed away, I think. Of brain cancer, and I went and I sat with her and we hugged and we kissed, and I would never, the person that had not gone through this would not have done that. Like I would have just been like, love you, I went and I got in there and I was hugging her and kissing her and talking to her, like you go that extra mile, and for people now, I mean, that's what I've taken away. Everything.
Yeah, and getting engaged and involved with people. Do you feel like there's a book in you that you could write about this experience?
Oh, I'm sure. I mean, if I had time to organize my thoughts, but yeah, I mean, I would love, not that I think that I have anything super special to impart,
I think you do.
To others. Yeah. Well, thanks.
I think you do. I think the way you handled the whole situation, again, is the reason why you're on the show with me today, is because of how you handled it and how you can teach that, or at least impart that or inspire that in other people when they go through things that, daunting things in life that we all have to go through, that they may not be as daunting as they seem. Okay. And to acknowledge that and move forward with whatever problem it may be, whether it's, who knows, whatever somebody may be going through, that to coach them for that positive mindset, no matter what it is. Mm-hmm. The hopeful mindset, and a lot of it, I would think maybe it was determined from you by faith, because you seem to you allude to that a lot with faith. I'm not sure what your background is on that, but if you're okay about it, if you want to shed some light on it.
Absolutely. No, I mean, I grew up in the United Church of Christ. I mean, I have a strong faith in God. But then also, how I was raised, with my mom. She's a single mom, and we just face things, and within a day there's good and bad. It goes like this, you know what I mean? And you just gotta trust yourself and give yourself time, get through that moment, and then get to the next moment, and sometimes that's just how it goes. So yeah, I mean, if I could ever, I know that I have, some colleagues of mine that, that are sometimes, it gets a lot. Aside from clients who are, but colleagues too. The job that we do is it's huge, and it could be overwhelming, but, it's like one day at a time, you know what I mean? Best practice, just, you can only do what you can do. And modeling that along with saying it, I think is helpful too. It's just got to believe it. And that's the main thing, you know, and even if you don't believe it, you know, keep saying it until you believe it, you know, and you know,
I agree.
Yeah.
And the one thing that I take away, one of my gifts and talents is sitting across a table from somebody. They tell me about who they are or what their business is. And I have a talent for basically taking what they do and simplifying the messaging of it, or seeing potential that they may not be seeing. And I'm going to tell you something right here and now that, you know, I asked you about, you think you have a book in you, and you were kind of, you know, not dance about it. There was a little lack of confidence there. Like, yeah, I probably do. I just got to organize my thoughts. I'm telling you here right now that you do. I think that, you know, part of the accounting and documentation of this process is undoubtedly going to help somebody else. And I think that is probably incumbent upon you to eventually write about this, become a published author on this, tell your story on this. I mean, because it's a very unique story. And again, you know, the way you handled it was almost, again, on the surface, superhuman, where a lot of people just folded. And again, you talk about that. We brought that, the fact that not everything was you know, sunshine, roses, and unicorns. Yeah. But again, here we are. And the way you handled it, I think, was just spectacular. And I think that you have something in you. Your story has yet to be run. You know what I mean? The next chapter of something is there for you, and I think that you need to really seriously think about it and pray about it. I see that, awesome. Undoubtedly, and I believe it.
I love it. Yeah. You know, thank you.
If you could ever do something and need help with that, I mean, speaking career, absolutely. Mm-hmm. You know,
love it. Yeah, I you know, absolutely. I mean, you've been a huge part of this process, and hopefully people stick around or do view that video. I mean, it's beautiful, and you did that single-handedly. So again,
and that was an urging. That was just me being a vessel. I truly believe that God said do, and I was another situation where I was like, okay, yeah. I'll do it. And again, it was an emotional connection to where Chuck was and relating to it. Father, husband, brother, all those things. I wasn't in the armed services, but you know, his being a Marine, you know, he could have picked any branch of the military. He picked one of the toughest branches.
Exactly.
Okay.
And jocks, yeah.
Right. But I mean, those guys, you know, those guys are the first to hit the ground and put their life at risk. And for the guy he was, yes, I thought along with you that this isn't fair, that this shouldn't be happening, but here we are. For a lot of people who go through bankruptcies or financial troubles or divorces, guys, it could be worse. Okay. Everything happens for a reason. And again, I implore you, look into telling your story, write a page a day if you need to. And that's one thing I tell people. If you want to write a book, write a page a day, just discipline, write something.
From there. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's good. Well, I appreciate that.
Eventually, 6 months to 12 months later, you got your book. Right?
Right.
And you start making public appearances on Good Morning America.
There you go.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I talk about marinating my mind in good stuff. This is what the podcast is all about. You know, I listen to podcasts. I tell people all the time, if you want to change your life, start auditing the things that you put in your mind, the people that you surround yourself with, and you start manifesting the things that you absorb, the people that you hang around with. Your life becomes worse or better by the choices you make in terms of the people and the things and the stuff that we all marinate ourselves in. And one of the things you had brought up is, you know, just the belief in that kind of concept. I used to be part of talk radio, and I immersed myself in politics, and I, you know, even got into conspiracy theories and all this other stuff. It did zero for my life. It did nothing for me other than frustrate the crap out of me, and didn't make me any more money, didn't make me a better person. I know a lot of people that just do that constantly. Okay. And it's amazing to me how little people realize the stuff that they marinate their mind in. Anyway, getting to that, what do you listen to? What do what were some of the things that you did expose yourself to during that time and even now?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, I music is always, I mean, I can't be in my car without music playing. So, and all different genre of music, but it really has helped settle me. And then honestly, just, it seems a little cliche as well, but I would go through those inspirational that you can get it on Pinterest or whatever else. I mean, I would put in a thought and then I would just let the word, you know what I mean? And it helped frame what it was that I needed, what words I needed for that day. So I really relied a lot on the inspiration, the sayings of other people that have gotten through similar emotions and similar thoughts. And then so between those two things, and then honestly, again, just the people and being that I had, such support with my friends and my coworkers and even the doctors, everyone everyone just kind of was there and reminding us that this is, that you can do this and it'll be okay. But, I do have a couple of sayings that I do keep. I mean, in fact, I had a chalkboard that I kept in the bathroom for Chuck, and I would update the inspirations each day, that I thought were maybe poignant or hopeful. So, that's really been helpful to me.
Well, I'm a believer. I'm a Christian, and it kind of came to me after my father died. My brother was a believer. And a lot of this kind of, and I'm going to ask you something really poignant. During this time, people either choose to become angry with God or feel him draw closer in their life. Tell me about that a little bit for you. I mean, as comfortable as you want to be with it.
Oh yeah. I mean, I've never been angry with God with this situation. I just don't feel as though that he was responsible in any way. I mean, in any way. I think again that there was a plan. Chuck was supposed to be on this earth to gift me with these two beautiful children, to gift others with friendship and inspiration. And even though his life was cut drastically short, he fulfilled what it was that he was supposed to do here. You know what I mean? And I truly believe that. And that was a gift. That was how it was supposed to be for him. And what I was supposed to take from it is what I'm left to do. Whether it's, talking to others or just living or posting or however it is. So, I mean, organized wise, I mean, I used to go to church and drag my kids to church every Sunday too and sit there, and sometimes this sermon would touch me and sometimes it wouldn't. More times than not it would, but, I did take a step back from the organized because I felt like I just was droning through that, you know what I mean? And, but I'll go back. I always know where to go. I have a church family and they always welcome me. And, so that's the change. So it may have on the surface looked as though maybe I was turning from God, but I think it was more so that I stepped back and kind of got a little higher than that instead of droning through these Sundays, really connecting with God, rather than just going through the motions. So
he met you where you are.
Right.
Where you were.
Right. Exactly.
It was important. And you let him in. And I believe in these types of situations that he's there with you more than you realize.
Right.
Than a lot of people realize, because I mean, even the most ardent non-believers will get mad at him when bad things happen like this.
Oh yeah, yeah. But no, I mean, that's not how I approach that in regard to, because it's a blame game. What can you blame? I mean, again, I really feel as though just kicking that off is that Chuck accomplished what he was supposed to accomplish on this earth. And wouldn't it have been more sad if he hadn't accomplished half of what I think in his 41 years that he did a whole hell of a lot more career-wise and traveling and marrying and children and friends and doing stuff than people do in 50 years of a life, you know? So it was just cut drastically short. But I believe that, and even through this process, even though his life ended, what his inspiration was to others and how he approached everything, I think was also how it was supposed to play out. So, you know, that's how I have to look at it.
Sure.
Yeah.
And it's a great way to look at it. Tisa Lopez, one of our classmates, she chimed in. She said, God doesn't give you anything you cannot handle. I'm going to actually take you to task on that, Tisa. I do believe that he does. I think that the only way you grow is becoming uncomfortable. And if you can handle it, you're not getting uncomfortable. Okay. And I know Tisa is, you know, she's crossing the threshold of 2 years of her mom
Right.
passing on. And trust me, I mean, losing a parent's never fun. But again, you know, if there's anything, Tisa, that you've always wanted to do, I mean, let this podcast speak to anybody. If there's something in 2019 you've always wanted to do, that be optimistic. I mean, use Karen's example of optimism and finding the you know, she mentioned finding the blessings in this experience and the good and what's supposed to come out of it, because intrinsically she believed that there was something good. Okay, where is God working in this situation? To not just for me, but for maybe somebody who is witnessing what's going on, this account of his working in my life, and what does it mean to somebody else, and bringing it forth that way, where you can start finding the good in this, and it's going to come. It always does come. You know, it may not make sense at the time, but you know, in the Bible it says God is good, right? So again, if you had something that you've always wanted to do in your life, and something has held you back, you know, somebody telling you couldn't do it, a parent not believing in you, or telling you not to take a chance, maybe it's too risky. I'm going to echo something, you know, one of the guys I listen to all the time, his name is Gary Vaynerchuk, and it's funny because I brought something up that just popped into my head. He talks about, this is the best time to be living as a human being. Okay, the odds of you being born in this particular time, even in this country, as yourself, are 400 billion to 1. Those are the odds. Okay, realize that you live in a great time in a great country, and at a time where you with this, you can pretty much make a lot of things happen. The gatekeepers are gone. Okay, you would actually, one of the things you had mentioned before was you know, quotes and inspirational memes and things of that nature. I believe you put up the speech that Rocky gave his son from Rocky Balboa.
Yep. Man, I love that one.
Right?
Yeah. Yes.
Life will keep you down if you let it. It's not how hard you can hit. Yeah. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving.
Keep moving.
We watched, this people probably be surprised to learn this about me. I have never seen the first 2 Rocky movies up until last week. Isn't that crazy?
Jim. Yes.
I knew Rocky.
My children, they've seen Rocky a million times.
From Rocky 3 on, right?
Oh, jeez.
Well, so to me,
Rocky 4 is just, the Russian one was just
the best one. From the music, you know,
hands down.
You know, no pain. The music, the training montages, all that stuff. I mean, I think they invented that whole genre of the training montage with the music.
Oh my gosh!
I mean, you go back and listen to the music now, it still fires you up.
It is. It's my ringtone. You can ask anyone in my life. It's my ringtone. It is.
That's awesome.
Rocky, the Rocky song.
My story of Rocky has been from Rocky 3 and 4 on. So I kind of got into the whole story when he was rich. And I always thought, I'm like, well, he's probably a rich boxer for a long time. But then I go to watch the first 2 movies and I realize, well, crap, that whole part of his life was very small. Yeah. The wealthy part, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And
young Adrian, Tisa Lopez, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
But man, guys, again, getting back to 2019, if there's anything you wanted to do, start the project. It doesn't have to be, as I say, looking at the top of the mountain. People get to the base of the mountain, they see the top, and they're like, how the hell am I going to get there? Guys, it just takes one step, one little small shift to improve your life, to, maybe you watch less television. Maybe you start listening to less politics. You disengage from stupid conversations on Facebook. You start listening to podcasts that are encouraging, that are positive. I mean, that's one of the biggest things that I did when I first became, self-employed, was I drove it all out of my head. I started putting good stuff in my head and listening to good things, Vaynerchuk and Cardone and things that they just, when I had a bad day, I'd just go to them and all of a sudden I'd feel, okay, I'm good. It was all good. Right. Mm-hmm. So Karen, I want to thank you for being on.
Yes. Thank you.
I know this is probably an emotionally tough conversation to have, but I really appreciate it. And guys, if you're listening, go to jimmccarthyvoiceovers.com/podcast and please subscribe. And even, I'll put Karen's connections and contacts in the description. If you're seeking anything that, you're kind of wrestling with, and maybe she can help you out, I'm sure she'll be happy to talk to you.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
How can people find you?
Well, on Facebook, I'm on Messenger and Instagram. I'm retired. I'm taking a little break from Snap. but yeah, or my email as well.
You're on Instagram as well?
Yes.
Gotcha. Right. Well, thank you again for being on.
Yes. Thank you very much, Jim.
This is the JMVO Weekly Primer. Please subscribe, rate, and comment via jimmccarthyvoiceovers.com/podcast.